Good afternoon, everyone. We are starting Legislative Day 6. This is the work session for the March 2nd legislative session. And first up, we have an appointment from Councilman Patoka for the Baltimore County Advisory Committee on Public School Capacity, Miss Sheila Thomas. Councilman Patoka, did you want to?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely.
Let me just say I'm delighted to nominate Ms. Sheila Thomas for this committee. Ms. Thomas has an exceptional background, and I think we're going to hear it rather than hear it from me. We'll hear it directly from Ms. Thomas. So thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Thomas, for accepting the nomination.
Absolutely, absolutely. I am quite honored to have been asked to participate on such a committee. A little bit of background about me. I have been an educator, recently retired in 2024 after 33 years in public education. I was also educated in the Maryland public school system myself in Frederick County. And then I began my teaching career in Frederick County and then transferred to Baltimore. I spent 24 years in the classroom, ranging from elementary school to middle school education, and then transitioned into administration. And I ended my career with a principal position at Summit Park Elementary. And I was the administrator that helped to lead that capital project that we did physically open our doors in 2024. And that was a very monumental task that we took on and were able to successfully complete a mid-year opening. So I bring that experience not only from the classroom, also my children were educated in the public school system here in Baltimore as well, Baltimore County. So I bring to the table not only my experience as a parent, my experience as a property owner here in Baltimore County, as well as a constituent, and then as an educator, as well as administrator who has physically been involved in capital projects to alleviate overcrowding and also did participate in the redistricting process that, happened before the actual opening. So I look forward to being able to participate and to provide some insight that hopefully will be helpful.
Ms. Thomas, we look forward to you being on the committee, and we're excited that you are willing to step up. And I think we have a really good group of people. So this is going to be a dynamic committee, I think, and doing some things that have not really been discussed in Baltimore County for a long time, to kind of be proactive about our school capacity and how we deal with it. And so we're like I said, we're excited about the formation of this committee, and we're excited that you're coming in with such great credentials as well.
Mr.
Yes,
Chair.
Yes, Councilman Patoka.
I just wanted to add to Ms. Thomas's comments that she offers a lens that's sorely needed on this committee, where she has been a school administrator, been a teacher, been a principal, led the renovation of a new school, beautiful school. And I will disclose, I'm going to disclose to my colleagues that Ms. Thomas lives right down the street here in beautiful Sudbrook Park. So just going to put that out there. But really delighted to have you, Ms. Thomas, and just wanted to add, Ms. Thomas, more than anyone on the screen right now, understands what school overcrowding can do in the ability to teach our students, in the ability to be fair to our teachers, and also to the families that attend Baltimore County Public Schools.
Thank you, Councilman Patoka. Any other questions or comments from the members? Doesn't look like it. Okay, well, thank you, Ms. Thomas. We look forward to your confirmation next week, and we appreciate you being here with us today.
No problem. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
All right, next up, we have an appointment to the Baltimore County Property Tax Assessment Appeals Board. Bart Oldfelder Klein is, I'm sorry, Barry Oldfielder Klein. Is Barry with us today?
Mr. Chairman, this is the next three that you have on the agenda for the Tax Assessment Appeals Board. As you said, Barry Oldfelder Klein, Henry Peterson, and Albert Zawicki. They are not here, but they
Okay.
are. This is a situation where, unfortunately, a member of the board passed away, and the law requires that three names recommended by the county executive be forwarded to the governor for selection to that role, to that board. These are the three names that the county executive has recommended. The law also requires that those three be approved by the council as well in order for the CE to forward them on. The resumes and application materials were forwarded to the council members for review. And if there is no objection, they'll be forwarded on to the governor, assuming the council approves them on Monday.
Right, okay. And Mr. Secretary, I would assume we would approve all three, and then
Correct.
the governor would make the choice.
Correct, sir.
Yes, okay. All right. And I know I looked at those resumes yesterday, so if you haven't, they're in your mailbox.
Yeah.
Yes,
Mr. Chairman, I just
Yeah,
wanted to say a
Councilman
word
Martin.
about Al Zawicki. He is a constituent of mine. He's got a long pedigree in federal, state, and local government. I believe he was chief of staff to Congressman Clarence Long at one point. I just wanted to speak very highly on his nomination.
Thank you, Councilman Marks. Okay. So we don't really need to do much there. We're going to move on to fiscal matters. And first up, we have a contract for the police department. This is for from Colonel Dennis Delp from National Medical Services Testing Services for Marijuana Samples. Colonel Delp, I think you're muted.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely.
The police department is requesting approval of a contract with National Medical Services Incorporated to provide marijuana testing services. The contract commences upon council approval and continues for 1 year and will renew automatically for 4 additional 1-year periods with the option to extend the initial term or any renewal term an additional 120 days. The contract provides that compensation may not exceed the amount appropriated for these services for the entire contract term. Police Department advises that the estimated compensation totals $55,961 for the entire 5-year and 4-month term, including the renewal and extension periods. The contractor will provide laboratory testing services for the identification and differentiation of hemp and marijuana for the police department, as well as court testimony when requested by the Baltimore County State's Attorney's Office or the court. The county will be billed at unit prices of $270 to $523, depending on the type of test required. The county awarded the contract through a competitive procurement process, and the National Medical Services was the only contractor to put in a bid. And according to, just for FYI purposes, according to our financial system, our previous 5-year, 3-month term contract that was approved by council back in 2021, a total expenditures shows for the contract last time for 5 years and 3 months was $18,655. And that concludes my testimony, sir.
Okay, thank you, Colonel Delp. Any questions from the members on this contract? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, it's
Oh,
Wade.
yes, Councilman Ketch.
Yeah, very quickly. Since the budget is, are we expecting to have more incidences where we're going to need tests. I've read in other states that have recreational marijuana that the number of issues with people driving while using marijuana have increased significantly. Is that happening in Baltimore County, or what is going on?
I haven't seen that personally yet. I think they averaged it out for 20 per year as a safe mechanism, just to make sure that we had enough money. For that, that's why it's the $55,000, which is the max that we could use. But they come up every so often when they go to court. Sometimes they'll request a percentage amount of how much percentage of the marijuana, just to say, make sure that it meets the law, under the law for hemp versus marijuana. But it's a really hard thing to gauge because we just don't know how many cases are going to come forward, and then how many specifically will be requested by the court system or by the defense attorney to do the testing for the percentages. We test for presence in our lab. We test for the presence of marijuana. But if we need the percentage, the instruments to produce the percentages, we don't have them on site. So that's why we do the contracting. But we did go with a 20 per year just as a safe mechanism for us.
Thank you.
Colonel Delp, quick question. Does this test the intensity of how much THC is in the bloodstream? Or
Well, this is for the actual when we recover marijuana. So if we recover marijuana, we have to sometimes prove, if someone challenges, how much the concentration of THC is in the actual plant matter.
in the actual sample, not
Exactly.
not the person.
Because back in
Uh,
2000, if I remember correctly, back in 2018, I think there was legislation about if it's under 3%, it's hemp, and if it's over 3%, it's considered marijuana THC. So that is what is the classification is, to test it to see if it's over the 3% threshold for possession of marijuana. But it's actually the plant matter that's being tested. It's not for the blood. It is for the plant matter that's recovered.
I wonder if the state, because of legalized marijuana, I mean, this may be a stupid statement, but it just seems to me that now that it's legal, if we're, if we arrest someone and they have marijuana in their possession, they're not necessarily breaking the law, but what they are breaking is that they can't sell it without a license. And they, and they're selling, they're not a dispensary. It just seems to me that some of this marijuana money could be kicked back to the counties to help deal with some of this stuff, especially if the rates are going up.
Yeah, this is going to be for situations, very carved out specific situations where someone has possession over the personal amount that you're allowed to have. If they're over that amount, or it's like you said, for selling it for distribution purposes, that we would have to determine that it was over the threshold of 3%. But yeah, so there's very carved out situations where this would be needed. But because of the instruments that are needed, so if we were to do it ourselves, just from a cost factor, it makes more sense to contract it, because we'd have to buy the instruments, we'd have to calibrate the instruments, we have to train personnel on the instruments for the low threshold of amount of people that we have that request it, maintain those certifications for the people that are trained, and then the maintenance of the instruments. So when you look at it from an aggregate standpoint, it just makes more sense to have a vendor do it for us when we do get the specific request from the state's attorney, because we're not doing it automatically unless we get specifically requested.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Any other questions on this matter? No? Okay. All right. Thank you, Colonel Delp. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Next up, we have Mr. Seth Blumen from Energy, and he's the Energy and Sustainability Program Coordinator for DEPS on a contract for WGL Energy Services Electric Supplier Services. Mr. Blumen, the floor
Thank
is
you.
yours.
Good evening, Chairman and County Council. The administration is requesting approval of a contract with WGL Energy Services to act as the county's agent for the purchase of electric supply. The contract commences on August 1, 2026, continues for 1 year, and will renew automatically for 9 additional one-year periods. The contractor will perform fixed-rate purchasing transactions for electricity on the wholesale market. These purchases are conducted on behalf of the Baltimore Regional Cooperative Purchasing Committee, which comprises Baltimore County and 23 other Central Maryland entities. It's a means of going out and saving energy on the electric supply market through fixed block purchases. This method has saved $333 million since the early 2000s. The electricity purchase is used to power county-owned operations, including facilities and streetlights. The estimated compensation totals $31,779 only for Baltimore County government, and that's the service fee for the transaction for the initial 1-year term, and $317,788 for the entire 10-year and 6-month term, including the renewal and extension periods. And I can take any questions now.
All right. Any questions from the members? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Blumen. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have Mr. Chris Martin, Director of OIT, on a contract for audiovisual hardware and services. Mr. Martin, how are you?
Good. How are you? Good afternoon. Council Chair, Councilman, this fiscal matter is to establish 3 new contracts with Daily Computers, Design and Integration, and Vision Technology LLC for audiovisual hardware and services as needed, awarded as a result of a request for proposal. Daily Computers, Design and Integration, and Vision Technology will provide all labor, technical expertise, supervision, materials, freight charges, transportation, equipment and parts required to perform consultation, troubleshooting, maintenance, repairs, and/or installation services requested by the county. The primary purpose for procuring audiovisual specific on-call contractors was to provide improved support for 3 highly critical county operations, such as the 911 Center, the Emergency Operations Center, Police Command and Control Center, and the County Health Department Emergency Operations Center. The technology and capabilities of these areas has continued to grow, with audiovisual needs being required among the county's departments. If approved by council, the initial term for all contracts will be 1 year with 4 one-year renewal options, and the total compensation will not exceed the county council approved appropriations during the life of the contract. I did have one auditor question to address. Please discuss the steps the county is taking to ensure taxpayers are receiving the best value over the life of the contract under this procurement approach. And in the end, these did end up being the 3 lowest submissions. But beyond that, detailed estimates are obtained from all vendors for each individual engagement. Each estimate is then carefully reviewed to confirm that the project scope is appropriate and does not include unnecessary or non-essential items. Finally, we engage through reviews and discussions with vendors to clarify requirements and revise estimates as needed. Not only does this approach make sure we are getting the best value, but that we address any potential design issues prior to the purchase. And happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Director Martin? This contract? No? Okay, thank you, Mr. Martin. We appreciate you being here this afternoon. Okay, next up, we have Mr. Terry Hickey, Director of Department of Housing and Community Development, on the Baltimore Regional Housing Partnership Training Technical Support.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon. Good afternoon, members of the council. The administration, through the Department of Housing and Community Development, is seeking council approval of a contract with the Baltimore Regional Housing Partnership. The purpose of this 2-year agreement is to provide training and technical support for our mobility program, which is a housing counseling and supportive services initiative operated out of our Office of Housing. That's also a required element of the county's VCA. While the counties maintain general compliance with the mobility requirements in the VCA over the years, the department's identified key areas where our program and its participants would benefit from additional expertise and access to customized tools that we don't currently have the capacity to create internally. Specifically, BRHP will provide customized training materials for our mobility staff, including in-person and virtual trainings. BRHP will also work with our team to update program policies and procedures and better align with national best practices and recently released HUD guidelines. Through the partnership, we'll gain access to valuable resources for our mobility participants, our families. BRHP has a proprietary online learning management system that will allow the Office of Housing to offer interactive workshops for our families, include program orientations for new households, and courses such as credit building and repair, fiscal literacy, and others. BRHP also has online tools that can help participants search for available housing, including units that are accessible for people with disabilities. And finally, BRHP has a team of data analysts who will work with our mobility staff and OIT to help automate program features and improve our efficiency, including dashboards for tracking client counseling progress and resources that would make it easier to engage with our landlords. This contract would commence upon council approval, continue through March 1st, 2028 with no renewals. Overall compensations not to exceed $68,320, and the funds will come from federal money awarded to the Office of Housing from HUD. And with that, I will stop and address any questions you may have.
Are there any questions from the members on this fiscal item?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just
Council,
want to thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to thank Mr. Hickey and your team for working on this. Often we forget about folks with disabilities and access when we're talking about HUD and affordable housing. So just wanted to thank you for your communication and work on this to make our affordable housing stock accessible to everyone, or at least work in that direction so that it's on our radar. We're not forgetting about it. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
thank you, Councilman Young. Director Hickey, I know you had a bill also, 1626, which is for the statewide voucher program. Do you want to cover that now while you're up?
Yes, sir. I
That way
would
we
be
don't have to
grateful.
call you back and
I won't say no to that. Okay, you want me to jump right in?
yeah, if you want. This is on page 13 for everyone. If you were surprised.
No, I appreciate the consideration. So jumping to Bill 1626, which is the statewide rental assistance voucher program. And I'll give a little bit of background, but to start, on behalf of the administration, DHCD is seeking county council approval for a supplemental appropriation of state funds totaling $1,816,944 from the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development. So by way of background, these funds are being awarded as part of a statewide rental assistance voucher program that was originally established by the General Assembly in 2023. The legislation was further modified in 2025, and the funding is just now being made available to local jurisdictions. The state program is essentially designed to act as a bridge, allowing counties to provide temporary rental assistance for up to 5 years to vulnerable families on the existing housing waitlist. In keeping with program guidelines and local priorities, the rental assistance will be prioritized for households on the waitlist that include one or more of the following: a child under the age of 18, foster child who's at least 18 but less than 24 years old, military veterans, individuals experiencing homelessness, disabled individuals, or elderly individuals at least 62 years of age. The program does not require matching funds from the county, and the award includes funding to cover the administrative costs of implementing the program out of our Office of Housing, including staff time. It's estimated that this current award would allow the county to serve approximately 305 county households, including 44 homeless families who have been housed on a rental assistance program from COVID that's set to expire. So we would be able to transfer those 44 families over to this and keep them housed. The grant period runs through June 30th of 2026, but the funds would continue to carry over until expended. And it's our understanding that the state legislature intends to keep this program funded into the future. Counties that use the money will be able to reapply. Counties that don't would lose the benefit. I do want to say, though, real quickly, before I complete my testimony, the county auditor had included a request to provide some perspective on the need for temporary housing assistance relative to available capacity. So just wanted to address that quickly. You all know this, but in general, temporary rental assistance, such as the type we administered throughout the pandemic, has been virtually exhausted, and the current sources are limited and typically only used in the case of imminent eviction. The longer-term subsidy administered by our Office of Housing has its own challenges, as I know you're also aware. The housing wait list contains over 7,300 households, and the average wait time to be issued a voucher is approximately 9 years. Federal funding under this HUD program also has not kept pace with sustained increases in local rents. As rents rise and federal appropriations remain relatively flat, the purchasing power of available assistance continues to decline. Essentially, we can't take as many people off the wait list, and it takes longer to get them off. So in essence, this type of aid directly from the state is critically valuable to get people, particularly our most vulnerable, off the wait list a little bit sooner and bridge them until a permanent or semi-permanent voucher is available. So thank you for indulging the history. I just wanted to be clear, and I'll answer any questions if you have any.
Are there any questions from the members for Director Hickey? None? Director Hickey, I had a quick question. You said 7,300 are on our waiting list?
7,300 households, sir, yes.
Are on the waiting list, so they're not getting any help from us at this point. They're just on a list to get help.
Not through this particular program, yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you. All
Thank you for
right,
your time.
we appreciate you being here for that. And we'll move on to Deputy Director Tony Russell from Public Works and Transportation. Sorry, Tony.
That's all right. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the council. The administration is asking for approval for a term contract with MH Asphalt Maintenance, Inc. to provide parking lot services at county-owned facilities. This contract will be used by DPW2 to maintain and refresh pavement markings, line striping, removal existing markings, handicap symbols, directional arrows, and related markings across county parking lots. The contractor will supply all labor, materials, and equipment necessary to perform on an as-needed basis to support accessibility and overall facility upkeep. The estimated combined value over the 5-year period with extensions is $414,000. And it's a 5-term contract with 1-year renewals.
Correct. Any questions for Deputy Director Russell on this? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here, and thanks for taking care of the snow once again yesterday, and
Yes, sir. It was a normal snow.
a little bit less onerous than the last one.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Okay, next up, we have also from Public Works, Miss Lisa Eichholz, Deputy Director on an Asset Management Services for water and sanitary sewer assets.
Good afternoon.
Director, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
So today we're introducing contract 2024-03 on-call asset management services for water and sewer. This contract will support the Department of Public Works and Transportation sewer and water design sections in their effort to expand asset management for their infrastructure. Professional engineering services are required to assist the county with enhancing its existing program by harnessing data from multiple sources to strengthen system modeling and decision-making capabilities across both linear assets like pipelines and vertical assets like pumping stations and water towers. The scope of this contract includes expanding the use of Info Asset Planner for pipelines and pumping stations, maintaining asset management dashboards, and improving system integration to support risk-based prioritization, lifecycle planning, and performance assessment. This is along with training of county staff on any new software. The contract supplements the current county asset management work being performed by our staff. County staff work has included building asset registries, developing decision trees, and establishing the consequence and likelihood of failure criteria that are used in asset management. Arcadis was selected on August 19, 2025 from a pool of 4 submissions evaluated by the Professional Services Evaluation Committee. This was a qualifications-based solicitation. The contract has an MBE goal of 20%. The total term length of the contract is 6 years, which consists of an initial term of 3 years with 3 one-year renewals. The expected expenditure per year is approximately $1 million each for the water and sewer design sections. The upset limit will not exceed the Metro funding allocation during the entire term of this contract. Thank you for allowing me to present, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from that? There is an auditor question as well. Did you see that?
Yes, and that was what I respond to. The current work by the county staff has regarded building the asset registry itself, which is basically populating all our pipes and infrastructure into our GIS system. And we developed the decision trees and the consequence and likelihood of failure criteria that this contract will use.
And the other question was, how does this differ from the internal effort? So they're going to be doing more.
Yeah, so they basically,
analysis?
we kind of built the foundation, and then they're going into the analysis and building out this software platform, which is called Info Asset Planner. And we'll be developing the different models within that we'll use.
All right. Any questions from the members on this?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Councilman Marks.
Yeah, thank you very much. I hate bringing up things that are kind of a little bit off topic here. And Lisa, this is not directed at you, but I'm sure you're aware of the family on Richmond Circle in Kearney and the sewer backup that occurred there. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Is this the one with the contractors involved?
The one with the contractors involved, yes. So for my colleagues' purposes, this is a family, newlyweds, in fact, that had sewage basically come up out of their basement, flood their basement. And it's a really heartbreaking story. They have incurred tens of thousands of dollars in bills. And I think our response has basically just been go through the insurance policy process. But I just really think that when this happens, there should be some sort of mechanism for holding these companies more responsible. I just want to bring this to everyone's attention because it's not right what happened to this family.
Okay.
That's it. That's all. I just want to bring this up because I think we should be holding companies responsible when something of this extreme nature happens. That's all.
Was it the contractor who caused the problem, or was it
Yes, the contractor caused an issue at the property, and that their insurance company is dealing with the property owner.
Well, it's taking a long time, and he's incurring, tens of thousands of dollars in expenses. And I don't think we should, if a company is found to be negligent, and I'm not saying they are, but I just think that that's something we should consider when we keep them on the list of our preferred bidders. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Eichholz. Any other questions on this before we move on? Okay. All right. Thank you. Next up, we have Mr. James Benjamin, County Attorney, about legal counsel services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the council. Good afternoon. The administration is requesting approval of contracts with two law firms, Saxena White PA and Pomerantz LLP, to provide affirmative legal counsel services related to the Employees Retirement System, that is the ERS, for securities monitoring and potential litigation. The contracts would commence upon council approval, continue for 3 years, and would renew automatically for 2 additional 3-year periods. Legal fees for Saxena White PA and Pomerantz LLP are limited to 18% and 15.5% of gross recovery, respectively, if a matter is resolved prior to formal initiation of trial proceedings, and 20% and 18.5% of gross recovery, respectively, if resolved after trial proceedings have commenced. Neither the county nor the ERS would be required to pay legal fees or expenses if a recovery is not obtained, nor will the county have to pay legal fees or expenses in excess of the aforementioned fee formula. Total recovery amounts and fees are not estimable at this time. The law firm is under the control and supervision of the Office of Law, and in consultation with the Director of the Office of Budget and Finance, will review ERS investment records and related information to identify potential claims and recovery opportunities. The law firms will perform analyses of the county's portfolio for potential domestic antitrust violations and other potential causes of action, and provide analyses of the county's portfolio for international foreign class actions and related claims. In the event the ERS incurs material loss caused by apparent misconduct, The law firms would provide legal advice, including recommendations on whether or not to pursue recovery through litigation. The county may terminate the agreements at any time by providing written notice. Both firms will have access to the full ERS portfolio and will work independently and with the Office of Law to coordinate efforts in order to avoid duplication. The Office of Budget and Finance advises that the ERS Board of Trustees had previously approved an agreement effective July 2001 with Mellon Bank N.A., now known as BNY Mellon National Association, to serve as the county's custodial bank. And under the agreement, BNY Mellon currently provides limited monitoring of securities portfolios, consisting primarily of submitting information to county's claims administrator following settlements in domestic securities class action matters. I'm advised that BNY Mellon does not monitor the county's investment portfolio or external information sources to identify potential losses due to corporate misconduct, does not provide legal advice regarding recovery options, and does not monitor international foreign class action matters. And as such, the administration determined that a contract for affirmative legal counsel services would be appropriate. The law firms will be responsive and will regularly confer with my office, the Director of Budget and Finance, and the ERS Board regarding case status, findings, and any settlement proposals and recommendations. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Benjamin. Any questions for Mr. Benjamin on this? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Benjamin.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, so next up we have Mr. Brian Shepard, Acting Director for Department of Rec and Parks, about accepting a donation of services to Oregon Ridge Woodland Garden Project. Mr. Shepard, Director Shepard.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the council. The administration is seeking council approval for a resolution to accept a donation of $15,000 from the Friends of Oregon Ridge to provide services and materials for the Woodland Garden Project at Oregon Ridge Park. $10,000 of those dollars are for goods and materials, and $5,000 is for implementation and installation services. This follows an earlier project to create the 1-acre fenced-in garden area we built late last year as part of this ongoing partnership with the Friends of Oregon Ridge. Outside of normal maintenance of the site, there is no additional cost to the county. Happy to take any questions.
Okay. Any questions for Director Shepard? None? Okay. Thank you, Director Shepard.
Thank you, everybody.
We're going to move on, actually back to Lisa Eichholz on Resolution 826, Baltimore County Water Supply and Sewage Plan, Cycle 43.
Good afternoon again. So, as you noted, I'll be introducing the Cycle 43 amendments to the Water and Sewer Master Plan. The cycle amendment process is governed by the April 11th, 1990 Executive Order, which specifies the annual process for petitioners to amend the water and sewage plan. Process begins with the May 1st deadline for petitioners to submit revision requests and proceeds with public notice and staff review, a planning board hearing, county executive review, and then finally comes before you, county council. After council vote, any approved revisions are submitted to state for final approval. All petitioner requests are reviewed by Public Works, Planning, and Environmental Protection and Sustainability. For Cycle 43, the county received the following cycle amendments and has routed them for your approval. The first petition is 25-01, which is 3117 Rice's Lane. This property is located in Windsor Mill and is currently used as an Islamic center. The existing facilities are on private well and septic. The current water and sewage designations are W7, S7, meaning there's no planned service. The petitioner requested the water designation be changed to W6, which is an area of future consideration, and the sewer designation be changed to S1, an existing sewer area, given the proximity to current sewer mains. Department of Public Works and Transportation and Department of Environmental Protection and Sustainability had no objections to the requested changes. The Department of Planning recommended the designations remain unchanged. The September 4th, 2025 Planning Board resolution recommended a designation change from W7, S7, again, that's no planned service, to W6, an area of future consideration, and S1, existing sewer service area. The second petition is 25-03, which is 8400 Park Heights Avenue in Pikesville. This isn't currently used, this site is currently used as a private men's school for grades 9 and above. The existing facilities on the property are served by public water and on-site private septic. The current water and sewerage designations are W7, S7, no plan service. The petitioner requested the water designation be changed to W1, existing, to correct a mapping error to conform with their current public water service. And the sewer designation be changed to S1, existing service area, or S3, capital facilities area. All reviewing agencies had no objections to the requested changes. In September 4th, 2025 Planning Board resolution recommended a designation change from no plan service to W1, which is an existing sewer service area, and S3, a capital facilities area. So we are requesting council resolution. Would this resolution amend the Baltimore County Water Sewerage Plan to change the designations as indicated above? I'm happy to answer any questions. And the auditor question, we did reference that. The one was a mapping correction. So they should have been designated as W1, and it was just incorrectly saved in our electronic maps. And the other one was asking for an S1, which reflects the fact that there is a sewer main in front of their property.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Councilman Patoka.
Thank you. Ms. Eichholz, on the 8400 Park Heights, the planning department reviewed that as well?
Yes, all three
And-
agencies, planning, public works, and EPS reviewed all of them.
Okay, and it currently does have water. And so this would just correct the designation that it's currently serviced by water. And
Yes,
it's currently on septic. And so the idea here would be to put it, is it to allow it to go onto the sewer system? What does
Yes.
it do? What are the technical, what does it look like through this designation?
so currently they're not allowed to connect based on their
Mm-hmm.
designation. So this would allow them to have someone run an extension to connect their property to the sewer main that is just down the street from their property.
So that was my next question, the proximity to the sewer. Is that on? So I know this property is between Park Heights and Green Tree, I believe. And so I don't know if you have the exact alignment. Would it be, would the alignment go towards Park Heights or towards Green Tree?
It
Or
would go to the north of the site. There's a small pumping station in that area, so they would run sewer, gravity sewer down to extend to that station and connect there.
Oh, they would extend it north.
Yes,
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
you're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Miss Eichholz. Any other questions from the members? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, we appreciate you being here. Next up, Mr. Secretary, I'm gonna change up a little bit of the order here, so don't freak out.
No, I understand.
We're gonna go to Mr. Lawrence Richardson, Deputy Director for the Department of Health and Human Resources on Bill 1026. This is continuum of care. He talked about this at the last work session, didn't he?
Yes, Mr.
Oh,
Chairman.
he's not here?
Right, I think on both that one, Bill 1026 and Bill 1126.
Okay, so we're not really changing much here then.
10 is the continuum of care 38 slot that Mr. Richardson talked about at the last work session, and 1126 is the smart policing initiative that Colonel Gorman discussed.
Correct. Okay, so we're through those. How about Director Lafferty on the Smart Growth America Community Connectors Grant?
I believe Mr. Lafferty is with us.
That's Bill 1526.
First consideration, yes, sir.
Director Lafferty,
Yes,
How
thank
are
you,
you
Mr.
this
Chair.
afternoon?
I'm doing very well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the County Council. Thank you very much for having me here this afternoon. The administration is requesting approval to accept a $20,000 grant from Smart Growth America for its Community Connectors program. Last summer, working closely with the Northeast Housing Improvement Association and its leader, Nancy Goldring, Baltimore County submitted an application to Smart Growth America for its highly competitive Community Connectors program. This would allow us to receive funding, training, and technical assistance to implement a temporary street safety project to reconnect the historic East Towson community. The application was a joint effort between the Department of Planning, Department of Public Works, and the Community Association. Baltimore County was honored to be one of 3 jurisdictions in the country that were chosen. The other 2 were Little Rock, Arkansas, and Akron, Ohio. These funds will be used to install temporary intersection improvements at the intersection of Fairmount Avenue and Towsontown Boulevard. This intersection is a critical connector for the residents and pedestrians of East Towson, an historically Black community founded in 1829 by freed slaves. The project will test out safety improvements, which will include traffic calming, enhanced crosswalks, and pedestrian-friendly design. The intent is to restore cohesion for the historic East Towson community, as well as improving connectivity and reduce speeding. Although this is a temporary installation, it is intended to open consideration for more permanent solutions and to be an example for other quick build kind of projects that can be installed in other communities. There is no funding match, and we request that the county agree to accept these funds from Smart Growth America. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Lafferty. Any questions for Director Lafferty on this? No? Okay, thank you, Director Lafferty, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate your time.
Absolutely. All right, so we're going to move on to Bill 826 from Councilman Mark, zoning regulations, Echo Park District Transportation Infrastructure Prerequisite. Councilman Marks?
Thank you very much. This legislation requires that prior to the issuance of a use and occupancy permit for the developments in the Eco Park area of Middle River, that several transportation improvements have to have advanced. And this will be, as the amendments are now being written, prior to a 600,000 square feet of structures in that area. First, there would have to be a direct connection of Benji's Road from its intersection with Earls Road to a section of White Marsh Boulevard, Maryland 3, that's within 100,000 feet of the intersection of Pocomo Court and Tangier Drive. And then secondly, that there would have to be a widening of Benji's Road located north of Eastern Avenue, west of Earls Road, south of Crossroads Circle, and east of White Marsh Boulevard. The intent here is to make sure that that development in the Eco Park area proceeds only with the transportation improvements that are needed in that part of Middle River.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Marks. Any questions for Councilman Marks on this bill? No? Okay. All right. Next up, we have another bill from Councilman Marks. This is Bill 1226. Uses permitted in RC5 zone riding stable. Councilman Marks?
Thank you very much. Several years ago, the County Council clarified how riding stables could be grandfathered within the zoning code. There were 2 requirements that we were looking at. First, the stable has to be located more than 200 feet from a residential property line. Secondly, the stable must have been in existence for at least 15 years prior to the effective date of the bill. What this is doing is, instead of saying that both conditions have to be met, it is saying that one of these conditions have to be met. It's basically clarifying the language in the legislation in.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Marks. Any questions for Councilman Marks on Bill 1226? No? Okay, you have another one, Councilman Marks, Bill
Yes.
1326. This is signs, placemaking signs. I think you talked about this last work session.
Yes. Yes. So this would allow for an electronic sign to be placed within the White Marsh Town Center abutting Interstate 95. And I talked about this a little bit 2 weeks ago. We have been talking to the administration, the Department of Planning about some amendments. Instead of calling this placemaking signs, we would call them regional destination signs. Look, I'm not a fan of many of these electronic signs, but on the other hand, places like the Avenue really do drive economic activity in that part of Baltimore County. I think this is an appropriate piece of legislation.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Marks. Doesn't look like we have any questions on that. So we will move on to, I'm losing my order a little bit. Looks like we're going to Bill 1726. This is from Councilman Jones. Zoning regulations, permitted uses in the ML zone in Owings Mills growth area. Councilman Jones, did you want to cover this? Councilman Jones, are you with us?
Yes, I'm trying to get my camera to come on. There appears to be some problem. However, I would just say that this is another one of the properties that's been sitting there for quite some time. And the idea is to enable it to do some other things, perhaps senior home or some other facility, all within the confines of the property right now. So that's the idea behind the property. Behind the legislation.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Jones. Any questions for Councilman Jones? I know we have a speaker on this, Ms. Belcastro. Did you want to call her speaker?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Mr. David Karczewski.
Mr. Karczewski, how are
Yes.
you?
How are you? Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the council. My name is David Karczewski with Venable LLP with offices right here in Towson. I'm here to testify on bill number 17-26. As all of you know, many jobs are now hybrid or entirely work from home in this county, as well as across the state. This change of employment status has resulted in a decrease in demand for office space, a significant decrease in demand. Vacancy rates in existing office buildings have increased, and there is little to no demand for new office buildings. As with other bills passed over the past few years, this legislation would permit additional use flexibility in the ML zone within a defined area of the Owings Mills. The ML zone is a classification that all of you know permits office buildings by right. The land use categories proposed by this bill, Bill 1726, would allow a variety of residential uses, senior housing, and some commercial uses as well. The additional flexibility would help revitalize office building properties and office parks in the area. I appreciate Councilman Jones' support in sponsoring the bill and request that the members of the county council vote in favor of it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Karczewski. Councilman Jones, did you, one concern I have, and I know there's another bill coming up from Councilman Catch that's similar. When we eat up all this manufacturing light zone for the future, we've got nowhere to put it. So if we put housing everywhere we have industrial or ML, at what point do we worry about it?
Well, Mr. Chair, I agree with your concern. And it was like the first question I asked, and they basically presented me with somewhere around 200 to 300 acres up the street that has just been sitting there that they own. So they feel as though for the foreseeable future, they are well positioned to provide space if we can get some manufacturing or some other type of industry to show.
Okay. I mean, it just seems to me that we keep building, we keep adding new zones for residential, but yet we're not creating, and I know this isn't you, Councilman Jones, I'm not picking on you. But we have land that is for manufacturing that potentially in the future we could try to attract manufacturers who might create jobs that might keep people in Baltimore County, but yet we're building most likely apartment buildings, which is, permanent rental opportunities for people rather than home ownership. And we're giving away land that potentially could have employers on it.
I agree with you. And the big question becomes when people come to me and say, okay, I've done my duty, I built this, I've had tenants before. Meanwhile, I'm waiting around forever for somebody else to show up. And all indications are no one's showing up. And when you, if you produce a manufacturer or you produce someone who needs the other zone, we have 200 and some acres up the street waiting for them. So sometimes it's sort of hard to make them stand there doing nothing. And by the way, when these properties sit there, their valuation goes down, and that's less taxes to us as a county.
All right. Well, thank you, Councilman Jones.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Councilman
just
Petrosi.
a quick question for Councilman Jones. Seems to be that there's quite a number of land use bills that have come up post CZMP. And so question is, the CZMP is a year-long public process, as you know, where communities are more focused and get to weigh in on different uses of the land. And so just curious, could this have been addressed in the CZMP? And how, it's coming up post CZMP, so I'd be interested in your thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, clearly it could have had they been at this particular place at that time. But I mean, CZMP was a couple years ago. So, could it have happened? Sure. But I mean, we're getting into a situation where we're second guessing and trying to predict what could have, should have, or maybe. I don't think that this property will cause any heartache for anyone in this community, because to be quite frank, not many people around it.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so we'll move on to Bill 1826. This is from Councilman Patoka. Conduct of law enforcement officers, mass prohibited and identification required.
Okay,
Councilman Patoka.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this bill relates to face coverings and identification for law enforcement officers in interacting with public in Baltimore County. And the bill prohibits concealment of identity during public interactions. It also requires visible identification. Some of the things that are excluded from this bill include things like medical grade masks, fire and smoke prevention masks related to weather, severe conditions, motorcycle equipment. If law enforcement is in a high risk event, then certainly the and by high risk, I don't mean the kind of high risk that, so there's different definitions that are present today. So what ICE is doing is not a high risk situation. It's a high visibility situation. So when I say high risk with a police officer, we're talking about hostage situations, shootouts, terrorist incidents. So those would be excluded. SWAT team operations would be excluded. Undercover investigations would be excluded. Exigent circumstances involving imminent danger would be excluded. Protective details for elected officials or dignitaries, or any kind of PPE that's required. But this is, Mr. Chair, this is really focused on the behavior that ICE has exhibited throughout the country. And, you know, to me, these masks are, particularly as it pertains to ICE, they're intended for two purposes. One is to create fear, and the other is to create terror. And we don't need that in law enforcement. And so while it's really difficult to control what goes on at the federal level here in Baltimore County, I think we should take appropriate measures to strengthen, to make our community safe, to reduce the amount of fear and terror, and especially this so-called law enforcement agency that just inflicts fear and terror. It's unacceptable to me, and that's why I introduced this legislation.
And Councilman Patoka, is your concern that the Baltimore County Police are doing these things?
It is not. My experience with the Baltimore County Police is, and I saw you sent me an email related to that today, Mr. Chair. And if there are modifications that you think are appropriate that would provide, that would better define this towards the law enforcement, the so-called law enforcement agency that's been the primary culprit in all this, I would be open to that.
Okay. Any other questions for Councilman Patoka on this? Councilman Crandall?
Yeah, thank you, Mr.
Can I ask
Chair.
a question?
Well, go, I don't know who
Mr.
that
Chairman?
was. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Councilman Marks. Councilman Crandall was.
Can you hear me?
Councilman Crandall was going to speak, but if you have a quick question,
Not coming through.
we can hear
We
you.
can hear you.
I don't think you can hear us.
Well, Mr. Chair, why don't
All right, Councilman Crandall, go ahead and we'll get.
So, Councilor Patoka, I'm confused. You're concerned about the tactics and certain procedural policies of ICE, and yet you want to apply that concern to an agency in Baltimore County that, to my knowledge, does not use masks in that capacity and always has their name on their uniform. So, why are we potentially hampering in perpetuity with this bill an agency that is a good actor in our community? I don't understand anything that this bill is about except for election year pandering in a Democratic primary.
Yeah, I can't hear you. So I'll just ask my questions at the next meeting.
Well,
Councilman Marks,
Councilman
Crandall speaking.
Mr. Chair, you want me
anyway,
to address Councilman Crandall's comment?
Well, I'm just saying, Izzy, I just don't, I mean, I kind of, from my perspective, this is trying to get votes in a Democratic primary.
There you go.
This is doing nothing. This is doing nothing. You're taking something that's happening with a federal agency, and and you don't agree with that. So you're trying to apply a law locally to a good acting agency that's done nothing but serve the Baltimore County citizens at their very best. And you're insinuating that our agency might move down that road. And I think there's a lot of people in law enforcement that would take umbrage to that insinuation. So there is no way I will be supporting this bill.
Well, Councilman Crandall, as I mentioned to the chair, I would be open to an amendment to better define this, but
Well, can we
we
offer,
as-
can we offer an amendment that does not allow for county council members who are running for county executive to pander in their primary? Can
No.
we do that?
Councilman Crandall, it's not pandering. It is addressing at the local level what we
Something
can
that
do.
doesn't, you're addressing on a local level, something that does not exist on the local level.
Well, I said I would be open to an amendment to exclude local law enforcement, but you're telling me
Then what is
what
the point
you,
of the bill?
because I don't want ICE in here terrorizing our residents. I don't want ICE in here inflicting fear in our residents. There's only 2 organizations on
What
this
does this
planet
bill have to
that
do
wear
with
masks
ICE
when they're
coming to Baltimore County?
engaging. It's
What does this
terrorists
bill
and
have to
it's
do with
ICE.
ICE coming to Baltimore County? It has nothing to do with ICE. We
It's
don't have any
terrorists and
purview
it's
or
ICE.
jurisdiction over ICE.
Listen, we all make choices, and my choice is to stand up for our residents, irrespective of where they come from. And right now, ICE doesn't care where you come from. They're willing to inflict terror, to inflict fear, and not only that, but they're willing to hurt American citizens wearing their masks.
This bill does not address ICE. It addressed the Baltimore County Police Department.
I said I would be willing to better define it.
You have made, that you have insinuated is or will become a bad acting agency in Baltimore County.
So it's not, this
And that's
discussion is
insulting
going
to our police-
circular,
that's
so.
insulting to our police department. I'm sorry, it just is.
All right. Okay, gentlemen.
Mr. Chairman.
All right, Councilman Marks.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to make a general comment. I mean, I think the reason why many police officers they want these type of coverings is because of this practice of doxing, where there's people who identify police officers. There's concerns about them being followed home, about their families being harmed. I mean, look, we live in a very violent age. And I think that's a big concern. The only question I would have to Councilman Patoka, have you mentioned this to the various law enforcement unions or stakeholders? Have you talked about this?
I had a meeting scheduled with the FOP that was postponed. So I was planning on that, but unfortunately the meeting got postponed.
Okay.
But like I said, and let me try to say this again, you know, to me, the Baltimore County Police Department, this is really other than creating a feeling that they are doing something inappropriate. They're not. And so, like I said, if it gives you, my colleagues and the police officers, more comfort, I am willing to better define this, but I'm not willing to give ICE a free pass in Baltimore County.
I just, again, there are reasons why face coverings are allowed. There are reasons why law enforcement has them. But we can talk about that later on at the next session. So thank you, Councilman Patoka. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Marks.
All right. Thank you, Councilman Marks. Any others before we do have a speaker on this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Councilman Jones.
Listen, I think it's horrible that ICE walk around and don't identify themselves. It seems somewhat un-American. Think about so many times people want to say, let me see your badge. People feel like they're entitled to know who is the person that is either taking their liberty away or treating them in a harsh way. And people feel like they have it right. I guess the only issue I have here in light of the supremacy clause is my understanding that we cannot, and this has already been through the courts, we cannot tell ICE they cannot wear a mask. Did I miss something?
You did not, and that's the executive administration's position on the bill as well.
Sometimes you have to stand up to make a strong statement, and this is such an important issue that I'm willing to stand up and make that statement.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to the speaker, Ms. Belcastro.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Our speaker is Eric Rockles. Mr. Rockles, you may begin your testimony when you're ready.
Yes, good evening, Chairman Ertel, members of the council. With regard to this bill, I am very ambivalent. I can see some justifications for it, and I can see some circumstances where it's not appropriate. Councilman Mark stole a little bit of my thunder by mentioning the issue of doxing. I wish in my hope and dreams that we could return to an America of my youth when figures such as the Lone Ranger and Batman wore masks and they were held up as a cultural hero and not a cultural villain. Councilman Patoka, I would hope that if this bill passes, that in the future you would offer and author a companion bill that would prohibit protesters from wearing masks at events around this county. And that's all I have to say, and I thank you for the opportunity to say it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Rockel. All right, so did anybody have any other comments before we move on? Okay, all right, so we're going to move on to Bill 1926. This is also from Councilman Patoka. Employees Retirement System for County Council Members, repeal of Bill 4024. Councilman Patoka, did you want to?
Yes, thank you,
Address?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And the reason I brought this bill for repeal forward is that there were 3 independent events that occurred over the last 2 years that came to a confluence recently. So the first event was Bill 4024 that was introduced in May of 24, passed in July of 24. And it was introduced by Councilman Catch, and it was to so that the pensions for county council members would parallel that of the state General Assembly members. And so that passed in July. And then the second independent event happened in November of 2024, when the voters of Baltimore County approved the language in Bill 4724, which stipulated that the council would be considered full-time rather than part-time. And then the third independent event that occurred recently was not an action by the voters. It was not an action by this council. It was an action by the Personnel and Salary Board in the Department of Human Resources. And that board made a recommendation that this council has yet to act on. But many people for narratives that they're trying to create have suggested that the council has taken action on a salary range that the Personnel and Salary Board Advisory Board has recommended. And so with those 3 pieces of information that were not available in May of 2024 that have become more clear now, that's the reason I'm introducing the repeal of 4024 in February of 2026.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Councilman Catch.
Yeah, Councilman Patoka, the council does have to take up the salary issue. I don't think it's any secret that I think the salary recommendation is ridiculously high. I mean, I just feel that way and never thought it would be go in this direction. We're going to, as a council, take a look at this issue and come to a decision. Don't you think it would be smarter, though, to take the law and as it exists today, when we consider the salary, we take a look at and consider the retirement system as well. There's nothing that stops us from taking any action, but I just think that the two need to be considered at the same time. And I mean, that's just my opinion on the issue.
Okay.
Mr.
Any others?
Chair,
Councilman Jones?
I guess I have a question for Councilman Pat. Is this a similar system that the General Assembly had?
It's identical.
Other than the percentage that the legislators get in the legislature is a lesser percentage than we get.
Well,
They get 40% pensions, we get 60%.
Oh, no, that's not true. You can go up to 2/3 on the state level.
Everybody knows who they count.
Mr. Chair, I think to answer Councilman Jones' question, the percentages may be, I'm not sure, Councilman Katz, I think just answered that, but the percentages in the General Assembly could be different, but it's based on a percentage, the pension is based on the percentage of what the current salary is of the current General Assembly. So the percentages may be different, but the salary amounts are the things that sort of change, if I'm articulating that the right way. And I just want to make clear, and I don't know where the council's gonna go with this issue, whether to study it more, whether to take a look at Councilor Toka's bill. But I do want to make it clear that in our discussions leading up to the bill in 2024, and then even when the voters voted to expand the council and make council members full-time, and there were internal discussions just either in the hallway or one of our offices or over the phone, there was no mention of going to a salary for the next council anywhere near what the board recommended, which I believe was what, 140,000 a year. I never had a discussion with anyone about going that high. The discussions were based on a salary that was more commensurate with other large jurisdictions in Maryland, and a salary that behooves a qualified person to run for the office and be compensated for their time in an appropriate way. So I wanted to make that clear point that I don't think any of us ever expected a recommendation that high, a salary recommendation that high, and certainly never discussed one that high. So just wanted to make that clear. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Councilman Crandall. Go ahead, Councilman Katz.
Yeah, I just, from my memory, every term, a member of the legislature earns 12% of whatever the average salary was that they earned. I know that after 22 years, 8 months, you max out at 75%. I'm sorry, at 66 and 2/3. So that's what the system is, and ours is more generous because I believe, what is ours, 20% a term?
But it caps at 60 now, I believe.
Yeah, and the legislative one caps at 66 and 2/3. Because after 40 years in the legislature, that's what I got, 2/3 of whatever the current legislature makes.
And I guess we need to check into that, because I had 2 different legislators call me, current legislators, who told me that it was 40%, and that,
I don't know, maybe in the last 12 years they passed a bill to change it to, I don't know.
I don't know. We'll have to check that.
I'd be a
And
little
it may
surprised.
not matter here, but that's what I was told by some
Yeah.
current legislators.
And they get, they don't need COLAs because as the salary of the legislature goes up, so does their salary, retirement salary. So, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councilman Ketch. Any others? We have a speaker. We want to go to the speaker. Ms. Belcastro?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Our speaker for this item is Nick Stewart. Mr. Stewart, you may begin your testimony when you're ready.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the council. Wanted to touch on 3 questions tonight. The first is, what was the real cause of this pension issue which you are discussing? Should council pensions match General Assembly pensions? And why are people so upset? And first, this council does disagree as to what caused the issue. Some say it was because of how 4024 changed how pensions were calculated, so that they would be based on the future salaries of new councils. So that's one saying on one hand. On the other hand, others say it's because the council supported going from part-time to full-time salaries. The issue is very clearly the former, because Bill 4024 changed how pensions are calculated. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with full-time salaries. Montgomery County, Prince George's County, they both do it. And the people who are running for county council are planning on this. So I don't think that's the issue. The issue is that your pensions are now based on future salaries that you never earned. And that's the issue. And that's why the council, in my opinion, should pass this repeal. Now, second, as you mentioned, some say that it's not a big deal because we're trying to match what the General Assembly does. But the trouble is that the council pensions were already more generous than the General Assemblies, for the reason mentioned by you, Mr. Chair, but also because council members already get paid more. They can start collecting their pensions even earlier, and council members have a better rate of accrual for each year of service. That can translate into tens of thousands of dollars. So it wasn't right for council pensions to match the General Assemblies in this case. But finally, I think people are really upset because changes to compensation should only benefit new councils, not anyone on this council, to avoid any appearance of self-dealing. And that didn't happen here. So we're upset about that. We're upset about being told that this is some sort of Lemony Snicket series of unfortunate events. That's not true. We know that people pay most attention to the things that affect their pay, sure. But we also know that here, in 64 days, the work group recommended going to full-time salaries and shared what other counties were paying at that time. And then a bill was introduced and passed so pensions would be based on what new councils make, whatever that might be. And then on the same day you passed that, you took up the work group recommendation and introduced a bill to pay full-time salaries. That was 64 days. Guys, we have tens of thousands of kids who are hungry. We have teachers who can't be paid. We have retirees who haven't received a pension bump in quite a while. And so we have 200 people who have signed this petition to repeal the bill, and it's why I urge you to repeal it too.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stewart. Any other comments or questions? Okay. All right, so we're going to move on to Bill 2026. This is from Councilman Marks, Development Impact Fee.
Thank you very much, and I apologize that my video is not working. This legislation amends the way we calculate development impact fees. In 2019, I was the sponsor of the legislation that led to development impact fees, and I felt at the time that those who are buying new homes should help to defray the cost of the infrastructure of the schools that are associated with those projects. What this bill does is it modifies the calculation in several ways. For example, it modifies how we view occupiable areas within a residential building, and it also amends the definition of residential development by modifying the list of exempted areas. I'm certainly very interested in working with the administration, with any member of this council, to modify the bill. I think there's a good argument to be made that the way we're calculating right now does impact affordability.
Again, I'm willing to take suggestions from anyone as to how we do that. Thank you.
Councilman Marks,
Yes.
you say it affects affordability.
Yes.
So are you telling me on what are our most affordable houses that are being built now?
I mean, the lowest cost would be, I guess, condominiums, townhouses, that sort.
Right. So this bill restricts things like, porches and garages. Is that something that affects those? I don't think it does. I think this affects bigger houses, and that's who we're getting the complaints from.
Well, like I said, Councilman Ortel, I'm willing to work with anyone to modify the bill.
Councilman Petrunca?
Yeah, just Councilman Marks, I got lost a little bit. Are you suggesting that the impact fees are, and if I'm misreading that, are you suggesting that our impact fees are too onerous?
I think that's been suggested by some folks. I do understand that when you pay an impact fee, it's absorbed into the 30-year life of a mortgage, right? So it's spread out over a long period of time. But I think relative to maybe what other counties are charging, it's been said by some of the stakeholders that the way we're calculating it is resulting in very high rates.
It's a really difficult issue because for decades, while other counties were charging impact fees, we were not. And those counties that were charging impact fees have generally speaking, have better amenities than we have. Parks, streets are in better condition. They have sidewalks. And so we were so far behind that I don't know if we'll ever catch up, but I think that's because we didn't do anything. We just allowed haphazard development. Whatever happens, happens. Now we're trying to play catch up, and I think that's where the issue is right now.
Yeah, Councilman Petrunca, you were very, very helpful when we put this bill forward, right? You and I were.
Yes, and thank you for your leadership on that.
Yes, you and I championed this legislation, and I think you're correct. Because we did not charge these in the 1970s and 80s, we are playing catch up. So I think there's got to be a sweet spot maybe here, and I'm looking forward to working with anyone to try to find that.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Councilman Jones.
I would just like to make one observation that we can assume all day long what the outcome would have been or should have been had we had these impact fees all along. It is possible that certain developments would not have taken place, and then that would have cut into our bottom line in terms of raising the revenues necessary to pay for schools and roads and police. So it gets a little dangerous when we say we did not do this thing then, and somehow if we were to do it, nothing else would have changed. Everything would have been the same. We just can't do that. Second of all, I mean, when you look at all the different jurisdictions out there with impact fees, it's a big question about whether or not they are helping to grow the economy or not. Because at the end of the day, whoever purchases a home in Baltimore County, they're going to pay property taxes for the rest of the duration of that property standing there, and they're going to pay income taxes. And everybody in their home who works is going to pay income taxes forever, as long as they are there, living in Baltimore County. So I just wanted to put another side of the coin out there to think about.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Councilman Catch.
Yeah, I'm sure that everyone on the council knows people who have improved spaces in their home. And by the definition in this bill, some of those spaces that have been redeveloped or have been developed after the fact or after the house is sold and et cetera, some of those spaces would have qualified for this bill and there would have been no impact fee. I'd like I can take you to homes where areas had been converted to small apartments, rooms, and those areas were not heated. Now they are. And I just think that since this is the only one shot we have for the impact fees, I think we ought to look at possibly lowering that fee for these spaces as a compromise. I think it's what, $6 a square foot? Maybe it should be $3 a square foot for spaces that are in the definition in the bill. So that would, I think we ought to think in that direction.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, go ahead,
I
Councilman Jones.
apologize, my computer's locked up. I dare not touch anything. But, you know, sometimes I look back and I think back to myself, having lived in Baltimore County for 20 years at the time, and for saving money and working every bit of overtime I could, all in an attempt to build my dream. So after 20 years, I end up buying me a piece of property and starting to build on it. And the only way I could really afford it was to literally do most of the work myself. And I can tell you where every penny went. And if you told me at the time, oh, by the way, we need an additional $20,000, $30,000 to pay for infrastructure in Baltimore County, the same county that I've been paying for 20 years, I would have thought that it was extremely unfair, and it may have made the difference between whether or not I could have built the home or not.
Well, Councilman Jones, if you were building it in Howard, Hartford, Montgomery, Prince George's, Anne Arundel, for that matter, you would be paying similar fees or higher.
That's true.
And we are the only thing I know is we're just starting to collect some money that looks, that's over a couple $100,000, and we're already picking at this law. And it's like, I don't know, something doesn't smell right about this bill the way it is. And I'm not accusing Councilman Marks of putting something, but I think we really need to be careful what we do here.
And I'm open to any suggestion.
Okay. All right, well, let's move on. We have Bill 2126. This is also from Councilman Marks. Uses permitted in the BL zone catering hall.
Yeah, so Bill 2126 permits a catering hall in the BL zone under certain circumstances. The zoning regulations define a catering hall as a facility or part of a facility used for serving beverages and food to groups, which reserve the facility for banquets and weddings and gatherings and things like that. Catering hall is not a standard requirement. Right now, the catering hall in the BL zone has to be by special exception. This says that it can just be by right if it's within an existing shopping center. That's all.
Okay. Any questions for Councilman Marks on Bill 2126? No. Okay. Well, that looks like all, unless we have. Mr. Secretary, I didn't miss anything, did I? I think I got it all.
No, that you got it all, Mr. Chairman. That was magnificent.
I don't know if it was magnificent, but it was. I didn't expect this meeting to end at 5:38. So Unless anyone has anything else, we can adjourn and we'll see you on the next week.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Great night.